Experience in the field of occupational therapy. With a keen interest in community-based work, she went on to do her master's in development and extension. Her passion lies in reaching children with special needs at the last mile through innovative and cost-effective solutions, and therefore explores establishing state partnerships as a crucial link to reaching the unreached, especially in the low and middle income settings. Madam is the Director of Community and Therapy Services at ADAPT, Mumbai, and has participated in several national and international projects that looked at disability policies in India under the leadership of Padma Shri Dr. Mithu Allur. Madam also manages her charity project Noor, a foundation set up with a vision of equal access to equal health and education for all. Dr. Rangwala is a national and international disability trainer and has provided training to developing countries in the management of disabilities in low resource setting. Is the winner of Bond UK Award in 2020 for her work with training work with UK-based charity Mates. She is also the winner of annual travel scholarship offered by American Academy of Cerebral Palsy in 2009. It is all yours, madam. Thank you.
Thank you, Yogita, for the introduction. I will share my screen. So this screen will have to, I'll just say replace current, I think. Yeah, I can read. So thank you to the Indian Academy of Cerebral Palsy and to Mallikarjun sir for inviting me for this series to share on my lifelong work, as I call it, I mean, in the field of occupational therapy. I think this background is making me look a bit funny. I don't know how to change that, but we'll just let it go. So thank you, sir, for the invitation, and I hope that the knowledge of occupational therapy, which has been quite unknown for the time since I passed out, but it is gradually gaining momentum and people are hearing about it. And I have this opportunity of sharing about the field that I belong. So thank you for that opportunity. So I'm just going to just very, very briefly, I'm going to talk on the topic of the day is occupational therapy in children with NDD through their lifespan. So that's a really large topic, but I'm going to try and make it quite simple so that people are, rather than talking about a lot of technical terms, I'm going to talk about what exactly is part of this field and how we need to work in it. So the three key main areas is first, occupational therapy. What is it? NDD, a little bit. I know the audiences, especially from the Indian Academy of Cerebral Palsy, would be aware, but just to touch upon NDD, and then what is the lifespan approach. So to begin with, what is occupational therapy? It's a client-centered rehabilitation profession that promotes health through active participation in occupational tasks. So when I say client-centered rehabilitation profession, that applies to all my other colleagues in the rehabilitation sector, that is physiotherapists, speech therapists, special educators. All of us work with the aim or the purpose that our client is the primary important person for whom we are providing our services. Active participation is that their voice needs to be heard before our voice, and it is their voice that we need to listen to and then provide our expertise solutions that we come with the degree of occupational therapy and vice versa, all the other rehabilitation professions. So active participation, they being a core member of the team is very important, and that is the base and an important part of occupational therapy. Occupational tasks. So when the word occupation comes to mind, we usually think about like, oh, when after I pass out of college, what am I going to do? Where am I going to work? That seems to be the general idea of an occupation. But an occupation is, much more than that. And it includes all tasks that are age appropriate for that person at that particular moment of time. So an occupation for a child will also be there. It will be there for a 10-year-old, 12-year-old, 15-year-old, or a 50-year-old, or a 70-year-old. Everyone has their respective occupations, and to enable that individual to perform their occupation well would be the role of an occupational therapist. So for a child, it could include play. An occupational therapist plays a key role in supporting a child in their play activities, independence in all their activities of daily living at all the stages of life. Once they reach the phase of going to school, then support them in their school. When they're reaching the work age, to support them in their career enhancement, and not to forget the very important aspect of leisure activities. So an occupational therapist has a role to play in leisure for a person at all stages of their life. So leisure when you're a child is different, and when you're an adult, your leisure activities should be adult oriented. They can't keep remaining to be child oriented just because you have a disability. So it's, this is the entire gamut of how an occupational therapist works. But since our topic, and here we are talking about NDDs, I'm going to focus on, I'm going to focus. Will my screen go? I'm going to switch off my phone and so silent. Apologies for that. I had put it on silent, but my phone is picking it up. Is my screen gone, right? You all cannot see my screen. Okay, it's come on for me. So I'm hoping that it has come on for everybody else in the audience also. So what is the role of occupational therapy? The key role of occupational therapy is to maximize your functional ability. So when we are working with people with disabilities, they would probably not have all the abilities, whether it is eating, drinking, sleeping, dressing. So you work with whatever abilities they have and you maximize it to the best possible. There are different ways of doing it by working with the individual as well as working with their environment, as I will shortly be sharing with you. And all of this enables to enhance the quality of life of that individual. So you can use adaptive techniques or you can use equipment. Equipment can be person-centered, that is something that that individual uses, or equipment can be within the environment that is making access more easy for that person. So an occupational therapist looks at that person's life with that lens and tries to solve their daily issues. And the end goal is, of course, to promote physical, cognitive, and social development of every individual. Just to touch upon what are NDDs. So NDDs, obviously, we all know, are conditions or a group of conditions that will affect the brain development. Those different conditions can be cerebral palsy, autism, ADHD, specific learning disabilities, and many more. Anything that affects the development of a developing brain can be classified under the term NDD. And because of the ability of the brain not to operate at its optimum, there can be challenges in physical, cognitive, behavioral, emotional, as well as social functioning. So a person may not be able to do the things considered as norm, meaning in his physical abilities, walking, doing fine motor activities, understanding, and thus interacting with his or her peers as well as the social environment. These disabilities, that is the NDD, the key thing is that they appear in the first year or first year of life. So they happen before actual development has happened, and so the brain has not learned these activities and then has to relearn them. This is the first time any type of learning happens in NDD for the developing brain. What is the lifespan approach? So lifespan approach is a framework of understanding development as a continuous process through life. So you basically take development and see it through the lens of the entire lifespan of the individual, from birth till the different stages of life that we pass through. So you understand and you try and project and make solutions for the different stages as one passes through. So as you pass from one stage to the other, you don't necessarily have the same solutions. Your solutions can be the same, but you need to change them too. The lifespan approach is multidimensional. That is, it looks at your physical abilities, your cognitive abilities, your social abilities, your emotional abilities, and all of that is seen under one umbrella so that you become a functional one single individual. That individual cannot be broken. Okay, his physical aspects are this, his social aspects are this, his cognitive aspects are this, and so we'll all work in isolation. No, the lifespan approach looks at that one person with all these different elements and how can all these elements be put together to help that single person. It also considers the impact of environmental and biological needs. So basically, the lifespan approach is very much fitting into our current ICF framework.
You remove the background. It is good.
Oh, I have kept it, sir, but I think my face is just looking okay. I mean, I think
It's okay, but you can.
I think there is some glare coming.
Yeah. You take
very
it out.
strong on my face, so right, it's reflecting
Better
on
remove that virtual
Can I
background.
remove my background?
Yeah. Yes, now it is good.
Yeah. That was the glare was coming on my eyes also. So I was, okay. Yeah, so it's very much fits into the current ICF framework. And I'm going to talk about the ICF for a bit. I mean, it's long. I don't want to, take up too much of time and also a lot of stuff in one go. Lifespan approach recognizes the need to change in the different stages of life. So if a person with NDD grows older, their needs are going to change. As we all normal individuals, also our need changes. So same thing applies to them. And thus the support systems need to change. And this support system needs to be continuous, as I'm going to share ahead. So we come back to what is occupational therapy and what are the different areas of work of an occupational therapist in NDD. So this is quite common. All of us work in this area, but I've just listed them very quickly for you. We work on gross motor development. That would be all your milestones, beginning from head holding, sitting, walking, all of that comes in the gross motor development. Fine motor development and dexterity, yes, definitely more of an occupational therapist domain. So we would work at bilateral coordination. We would look at fine motor movements. We would look at writing, different types of grasps. All of that would be definitely part of the occupational therapist intervention domain area. ADL skills, of course, we know that they come into an occupational therapist domain area, and ADL skills can be the basic ADLs, that's the eating, drinking, toileting, mobility, dressing, undressing, as well as the instrumental ADLs, which come later on. That is, understanding how to manage your house, how to manage your independent living skills, how to understand budgeting. Those are all instrumental ADLs. So as the individual passes through the different phases of their life, their ADL skills would also need to be managed accordingly. Cognition. So not being a psychologist or not being a special educator, but an occupational therapist drives all of these interventions of gross motor as well as fine motor as well as ADL, drawing in upon the person's own understanding, the person's own intellectual capacity. That's where the occupational therapist stimulates or works with cognition. Social skills, similarly, it is a domain of the psychologists and special educators, but an occupational therapist works in groups and in children who do have socialization issues due to certain sensory processing challenges. The occupational therapist's role would be able to understand and pass on this information and skills to her other co-professionals, and thus bring about a development in the child. School readiness and a career ready plan. Preparing the child for school. Does he have the ability? What is his visual tracking? What is his spatial relation? Will he be able to copy from the board? Is he able to hold a pencil? Can he write fast? So all those analysis of those skills are part of an occupational therapist domain area. And she works with the families. She or he works with the families and then prepares this plan based on the needs of the child as well as the needs of the family. Like I said in the beginning, all of this is in partnership with the clients. So if the client is a young child, then definitely the parent becomes an important member of that client team. Still continuing, sensory integration. We call it sensory integration, but when we talk about interventions, we call them now, as evidence has shown, we can't call it, in the brain, what happens is sensory integration, but the intervention is not called sensory integration therapy. It is called sensory-based intervention. So all your interventions that you do, if the child is having auditory hypersensitivity, you provide auditory interventions within his setting in such a way that he gets the processing happens in the brain. It is not your therapy. It is the intervention that you give. So your intervention is sensory-based intervention. You're not giving sensory integration therapy. You're giving a sensory-based intervention due to which the sensory processing, the child is able to make the adaptive responses and be able to, have optimal sensory integration. Play is crucial. I mean, whether it's gross motor, whether it is fine motor, whether it is sensory integration, whether it's ADL, if play is integrated into all of this, then that is the key way in which you need to provide intervention to make it more meaningful and more long lasting, because the brain only understands those activities that it enjoys. Otherwise, we've heard about the brain shutting down. So if the brain is going to shut down, no amount of therapy is going to help that child. When the child is enjoying what he or she is doing, the receptiveness of the therapy will be much more than you, and it will be long, because we've heard of neural plasticity and all of that comes in that element that I just spoke about. Adaptive technology, that's a big game changer in today's world. And yes, adaptive technology doesn't only mean giving a walker or a wheelchair. There is lots more now available that can be used by people with special needs, especially in the NDD sector. Adaptive technology in the environment. That is the next one, is environmental adaptations. They both kind of go hand in hand. I mean, you can't give a wheelchair to a person who lives on the third floor and he's not going to be able to really use that wheelchair. So making context with your assistive technology device to the client's environment is the key matching that needs to be understood before giving that device. Otherwise, that device is going to remain in one corner and it is not going to be that effectively used. Life skills training. I mean, I've done it and I've always, encouraged that whatever you do, your interventions, as the people grow older, it needs to create a meaningful impact in their life. I mean, it can be like important of just adding or understanding the money concepts. How do you 10 rupee note, if you have to go and buy 10 rupee coin now, 100 rupees, etc. So that also an occupational therapy therapist would do along with some other intervention. So it can't be a standalone one, but it can be fitted into some other. So if she's doing sensory integration, life skill can be included into whatever age the person is at. Gross motor, that can be included. So all of these go hand in hand. And the last one is the key or very, very important one that I believe in and I strongly work with is parent training. Right from the day one that the parent enters into your clinic or your setting, you start making them, give them the power rather than keeping the power with yourselves. So power is knowledge is power. So once they have the knowledge, they can then work around things and they can solve. Each child or each person is unique, and their parent or their families have the strengths to deal with their own situation. So for me, parent training is really, really important. And considering that the last 10 to 15 years of my work have been spent largely in doing parent training and parent empowerment. What are the key approaches that an occupational therapist uses? All of this is based, there is a science to everything, all the intervention techniques that we work with, and some of the therapeutic approaches are. So every activity based on the need of the clients needs to be simplified or broken down into parts. You cannot jump to part 6, which is, say, going to the toilet. Going to the toilet, there are many, many activities before that. brushing your teeth. There are many, many activities. So you break that activity into smaller segments and keep practicing the part one, and then gradually reach to the last one, which may be 6, 7, 10, whatever, based on every client and the activity. So the activity has to come from the individual or from the family. And most families that I work with, or all these years, my experience, that toileting becomes, brushing, feeding and toileting. These are really two very important activities for a parent with a child with special needs. And so we need to really take those activities, break down into smaller elements based on where the child is, and then show the mother how it can be done. So task analysis is what an occupational therapist's expertise is in. Sensory integration therapy, that is managing the sensory processing challenges and giving strategies for intervention. Cognitive behavioral strategies, that is getting them to understand, getting the client to break it into smaller steps by understanding. So questioning a kind of role, rather than being just the leader and saying a directional role, it should be a bi-directional role. You are also asking, you are questioning as a therapist, and based on the responses you get from your client, you design your intervention strategies. So a lot of emotional regulation, problem solving. Parents do have the capacity for their own child to come up with some innovative solutions that I have seen through these years in my career. Assistive technology, whether it is in mobility, whether it's in any of the activities of daily living or in communication. So even when we are doing communication, it becomes the domain area of a speech and language therapist, but an occupational therapist would need to guide in terms of how is the person going to access that device. Is it a finger? Is it a nose? I have elbow? Whichever way the client finds it most effective to use can be guided by an occupational therapist. So having considered and said how important an occupational therapist's intervention is in terms of providing technology or providing support, as well as working with the environment, the ICF completely fits into how an occupational therapist thinks in her intervention plans. So we all know I'm not going to go into the different aspects of the ICF, but just share with you two examples. If we have a child with cerebral palsy, so the condition will obviously be damage to some area of the brain of before, immediately after birth. The result of that is that in the body structure function, the child is having either increased tone, spasticity, some contracture and deformity. That would all be problems in the body structure. Function would be inability to walk. Then comes the activity. Is all of these structural difficulties lead to challenges in activities, which would be unable to sit independently, unable to walk independently, as specific to a child with cerebral palsy. And because of the inability to walk or sit, they are unable to go to school. They are unable to go to places which are on a higher floor because of access issues. We take an example of a child with autism, has no communication and doesn't have socialization. Those are all functional challenges that a child with autism may face. Because of his socialization and communication challenges, his activity limitations are that he is not able to interact with his peers. sometimes may not be just, these are just some examples, not able to go to crowded places, not able to attend family gatherings, etc. Those are the activity limitations. And participation is that he does not participate in any of the social activities along with others. So participation is usually that individual activities is when the individual has to do it for himself, and participation is those same activities become more meaningful in a group situation. Environmental factors for both can be attitudes of teachers, parents, the community, the ability of ramps, of assistive technology. Those are all the environmental factors which are outside the purview of that individual. And within the purview of that individual would be his family, how supportive they are, what is his age, what is their socioeconomic structure, what is his own innate personality. All of that would fit into the personal factors. So ICF really, I mean, all of occupational therapy interventions basically come in the domain of activities, participation, or environmental factors. And personal factors, your intervention would be very limited unless and until you go and you plan some intervention with the mothers, which is going to change the socioeconomic strata. That's a different ballgame. But largely, our interventions are at activity, participation, or environmental. And as the child or the person grows older, most of an occupational therapist interventions is in participation or in the environment. Activities then, kind of as you grow older, in the first 5 years, you have a very key role because of the brain plasticity to change things in the activity limitations. But post 5 years, then you should move all your interventions to seeing how you can promote participation by reducing the environmental barriers and even some of the personal barriers. So if the parents are not accepting, if the community is not accepting, then you can work on those aspects also. So having had the opportunity to work at an organization which looks at disability in a really, holistic manner, I have been, as an occupational therapist, been able to do several different areas of work, whether it's parent training, whether it's community sensitization, all of that also can be, part of an occupational therapist's job description. And changing scenario, because of the ICF, a lot of our therapy interventions have changed. From the time I graduated till the time today when I provide my interventions or when I talk to younger therapists, I can see the shift existing. And I'm sure as we go along in the future, the shift is only going to get better. So all of us, if we start focusing on environment, we're going to create a better atmosphere or a better environment for all our clients that we work with. So just not looking within the client, but also extended a little bit. I mean, we can't go and make huge changes, policy level changes and changing the environment. All of that is, not really always within the scope of an office, but giving environmental modifications within a school, at least opening your mind to seeing if that is possible, is really creates a change in that one individual's life. So the ICF created these different terminologies, and I have been working under them. That is, the transdisciplinary approach, family-centered practice, functional therapy using cost-effective resources, because now globally we are all saying that we need to, cut down on resources. We need to save on the money that we are spending more effectively. So using local resources is definitely the way forward. Goal-oriented therapy. I mean, I could have put in some research papers that talk about goal-oriented, but I can't really include everything. But yes, if we had a goal and then we worked our therapy strategies, the goal being prepared in partnership with the client, then they would definitely be helpful. Sensory interventions have to be context based within the person's life, and then you give your sensory intervention. So most definitely there is a role of pulling that child out into a therapy room and giving him sensory therapy, but definitely picturing that he has to go out and use whatever you have taught him in your therapy room once he is outside, he or she is outside also. So context-based sensory interventions do definitely play a role. So this is transdisciplinary approach that I work very much with, and last 4 or 5 years, at least COVID really taught me that, you know, this can be very, very helpful, where you have a multi-speciality team, you have a lead therapist who can be an OT, PT, SLP, and based on the needs of the client, all the other people come in as and when required. But there can be one lead therapist. It especially works in low resource settings, especially in our rural areas. This model would really be effective and would be helpful. So this is just a paper on some papers to support teletherapy and to support transdisciplinary approach. So this is a paper that I had published, and the other one on which I based all my knowledge on. Now I just go very quickly through the ages. So obviously we know that 0 to 3 years is about plasticity, early intervention, working with the child. So obviously the focus there is try and give as much of intervention as possible. It will be focused in the area of gross motor, fine motor, that's walking, talking, grasping, but everything should be in the play-based techniques that I just spoke about. So positioning techniques, all of that. But I've highlighted some things in red, which I think are important. That is play and caregiver training. These two, incorporating it in everything that we do. Play will definitely enhance neural plasticity, and it will go beyond your first 3 years of life and help the child even more. So just an example of training of a mother. I mean, it's essential that you need to explain why to the parent, why she needs to hold the child in this. Once they understand the why, I mean, I had this child who was absolutely into opisthotonus, but, you know, after explaining to the mother, she was able to bring about these changes. And here I can show you the transdisciplinary approach these are all young kids under the age of 5 years. They don't have an occupational therapist. They don't have a physiotherapist. They don't have a speech and language therapist. So what can be done? I mean, shall I forget about these children? No, these are all parents who have been empowered through, you know, distant training. I mean, I have empowered workers there, and then the workers have passed on that information. So I think knowledge is important for families, and then they can work through the lifespan for that child. So you may be there in the 0 to 3 years or 5 to 6 years age category, but the parent is going to be there lifelong. And so I think, I mean, in my opinion, preparing them is preparing the child for life. So a lot of my time, if I do clinical interventions, is spent on training that particular parent in whatever I have to do. Rather than spend 45 minutes doing my clinical work, I would spend 25 seeing how the mother is doing, and then the rest probably I would work with the child. 3 to 6 years, still a stage where the child is in the play. So play-based therapy. Communication is coming in a big way. So we really need to see how the child is interacting. Vision, that is something that I acknowledge and I admit that when I was younger and when I was in, for children with cerebral palsy, we truly were so focused only on the mobility, sitting, talking, that we forgot about the role of the eyes. But now we have, under the IACP as well as with Dr. Usha Johari, found a global vision alliance, and we are really hoping to promote the importance of working on vision for all children with NDD. Dexterity, bilateral coordination, mobility, feeding. So this is the right time, to begin independence in feeding. It's crucial. I mean, it may take a longer time, but it's really important to keep working on those skills. So I'm not really going to share. So encouraging the mother, using whatever you have within the environment. Vision, tracking. I mean, we worked on it, but passing that information and really giving a lot of thrust and focus on working for vision. We were looking at vision more for bilateral coordination, for reaching, but we didn't only think of the eyes as a separate unit. Now we really need to start looking at eyes and the whole body as one, looking at cost-effective walking aids. So you need to give the aid because mobility really enhances, a lot of development in lot of other areas. So the minute the child starts learning to move in whatever way he or she is, they can explore the environment, and then cognition, sensory processing, all of those things become so relevant and so important, and they really become helpful. So yes, mobility I have put in as a special need. So don't keep waiting, and please introduce a mobility aid. In our context, we do not introduce a wheelchair because the parents are worried, because our environment is not very conducive. But even if a child had a powered wheelchair at a younger age, at least they would have the chance of experiencing movement. It's lack of movement that stops them from learning so many other things. 6 to 14, now the child is in the school going age, and so your assistive technology needs to move. If the child is not sitting, look at seating within the school environment, look at physical accessibility outside, within the home, within the school, and you begin a lot of social interaction within with peer groups, because that really plays an important role in developing self-esteem and confidence. I mean, I've worked with kids for a long time, and now they're all adults. Some of them are CAs, some of them are, something else. So they all do definitely say that the social interaction played a big role in developing their self-confidence. So yeah, I mean, aids to help in writing, dressing, hand-on-hand techniques within their natural environment, environmental adaptations within whatever their area is. This is a task analysis, or understanding what the child can do and how to break the feeding. I mean, you can see it's an older child, but with task analysis, we have been able to, even at this age, a child who was being fed is being able to break down and eat on his or her own. 14 to 18 years, life skill becomes important. Career guidance and sexuality come in a big way. So we have to work in partnership with psychologists, because this is a very difficult age for parents as well as for the families, because they are obviously, they have limitations in what they can do, how they can express. So it's a difficult age for all able-bodied children, and with our group of children, it's even more demanding age. So here you can see how cooking definitely is a skill for girls as well as for boys. Taking care of their own home environment, all of this has to be in the domain of an occupational therapist. It depends upon your setting that you're working in. But if you're getting a client who's 13 or 20 years old, we definitely don't want to work on mobility. We definitely need to start working on these life skills training. Here on communication, we have this person is using a big mouse, introduce the assistive technology. He actually is an entrepreneur and he sells and creates these tech tools and creates products, and he is selling them online. So technology is also a big game changer at this point. We go on to adulthood, where, of course, then we move on to independent living or assisted living. Once they've crossed 18, the life completely changes. I mean, therapy then becomes, they don't want to do it, the parents are older. There are many, many challenges that come in once the person becomes 18 and older, which as therapists, we still don't have answers to. But as a collective group, we need to address these issues. Health management. Obviously, we know that people who have special needs age faster, and so their health issues start coming in much more. So you being the therapist who has been, you are from the medical background, so you will be the first person that the family is going to reach out to, which I'm talking from my own experience, that my older clients also may reach out to, which may not be related to therapy, but they still reach out to me for issues which are related to health, because they develop that kind of trust in you, because you worked with them for so many years. So you should be able to at least guide them in their health management. The postural guidance doesn't stop even when they become older and adults. We know about the hip protocols and we know how important the hip is. So that ongoing has to continue. Socializing, how to make them independent. I mean, see, there are going to be there are going to be cardiorespiratory challenges which need to be worked on. There are going to be motor challenges which we need to work on through strength training. Because the digestive system is going to go slower, we need to work even on, maintaining ADLs, maintaining the best position that they can for all of these. So, I mean, assisted living is coming up in a big way. And, these are things that an occupational therapist brings in these scenarios. When they're adults, they're all over 25, 30 years old, even 40. These are the important things that as an occupational therapist, you bring at that stage in their life. Aging with disability. I mean, myself, Dr. Shashikala, our co-colleague from our IACP. We have spoken about this on many occasions, that it's a black hole. There are many secondary health issues, and I don't have the answers, and neither does the medical fraternity. But it is our responsibility to work as a cohesive team so that aging with disabilities, especially in low resource settings, how can we help our client to maintain their quality of life, maintain their social and cognitive health. So I think assisted living facilities are coming up in a big way, and working so that we can maintain all of this. But there are no easy solutions. I think even the West is struggling with aging with disability. But we know that for our clients, I mean, I know friends who are disabled and who are 50 and above, and yes, they do have cardiorespiratory issues, mobility and all that, forget, but they normally do have a lot of other more health challenges than a normal 50-year-old would have, which we should be aware and we should be able to provide solutions. So key takeaways that OT supports individuals with NDD in achieving functional independence across the lifespan. The lens needs to change. It's essential to remember that every individual is unique and so is every life stage. Lifespan approach essential for promoting quality of life, autonomy that's making them the center, and then adapting to their needs. Future directions I see is addressing gaps around aging with disability. We've really, early intervention, we've come a big way. Even school readiness, we've come a big way. Adult also, we have people with cerebral palsy who are doing brilliant work, people with autism who've really achieved so much. So we've, like gone through some of the stages of their life very efficiently. Now there are some still which are unknown, and as a team we all need to work in addressing those gaps. Occupational therapy practitioners ask, what matters to you, not what's the matter with you. And with that, I end my presentation. I hope it has not been too long and I hope it has been helpful. And for any queries, I'm going to leave, since this is not an interactive workshop, I'm going to leave my email. And Mallikarjun sir also has my email. Any queries regarding my talk, any questions or any clarifications, I am happy to address them. Thank you once more, IACP and Mallikarjun sir, for this opportunity.